Under the eaves of an ancient temple, the wind rustled, causing a flag hanging from a tall pole to flutter continuously. Two monks stood watching and began to argue. The first monk said, "The flag moved because of the wind." The second argued that the flag was moving of its own accord. They quarreled on and on, neither yielding, each steadfastly defending his own perspective. At that moment, a Zen master walked by and quietly uttered a light sentence. He said, "It was not the wind moving, nor the flag moving, but the minds of the two men that were moving." The eternal habit of human beings is to always cling to external forms. Whenever we feel sad or angry, we hurriedly blame circumstances or someone else. If it rains, we blame the gloomy sky. If someone turns their back, we resent the fickleness of human nature. All suffering and torment stem from the belief that the cause lies outside the body. But in truth, the world existing before our eyes is not a permanent objective reality. It is merely a fragile painting, reflected through the lens of our own consciousness. When the mind is calm, everything we see is a peaceful sky and a quiet sea. When the mind is stormy, even while standing amidst a vast expanse of spring flowers, we see only decay and wilting. Everything that exists is created by the mind. From that perspective of reflection, looking back at the origin of life reveals things much deeper than the physical surface. We often hear it said that humans evolved from animals through a mechanical process spanning millions of years, shedding layers of fur, standing upright, and gradually becoming higher beings. But the enlightened ones never taught this. There is no physical coincidence in this infinite universe. Every appearance operates strictly according to dependent origination and the power of karma. To be born human is to carry the karma of a human. To be born an animal is to carry the karma of an animal. It is not that the flesh and bone naturally transform, but that whichever type of karma the consciousness corresponds to, it automatically receives that body as its dwelling. If one believes all species must evolve over time to become human, just quietly observe the monkeys. They have existed on Earth for countless ages, reproducing through tens of thousands of generations. Why do they still bear that form today, lingering in the treetops? Why can they only imitate sounds, but cannot understand the profound meaning of words? They cannot contemplate miraculous truths. They cannot sit in silence to reflect upon themselves. The greatest boundary separating humans from animals does not lie in a larger brain or an upright posture. It lies in the space of silent retreat within the consciousness. An animal lives entirely by unconditioned reflexes. When hungry, it seeks food, and when thirsty, it bows its head to the stream to drink. When afraid, it runs headlong, and when angry, it rushes to tear others apart. They dash forward, following the instinct for survival, like an arrow that has left the bow, with no turning back and no hesitation. But a life carrying a human form is different. The mere ability to know what one is thinking, To identify whether a thought is wholesome or unwholesome is an immense boundary. That is, the spark of the capacity for self-reflection, which is the ability to see through the darkness within the soul, to know what one is about to say or what action one is about to take. This is not the evolution of muscles or skeletal systems, but the brilliant sublimation of consciousness. Yet, despite the fortune of carrying a human form, the consciousness does not always maintain that noble dignity. It's wrapped in a shimmering shell of civilization. Skyscrapers of glass and steel and brightly lit avenues replace dense wild forests. Material comforts are so plentiful, they are excessive, and people can connect with a single touch. But if we look deep into the nature of human desire, from ancient times until now, it seems nothing has changed. When greed arises or when anger explodes, people are still ready to tear each other apart in the marketplace or trample one another with sharp, thin words on information networks. Sometimes that cruelty is no different from a pack of animals aggressively fighting over prey in the deep forest. It is still that primitive wildness, only carefully disguised under a more sophisticated veneer. We beat our chests in pride over intellect and progress, yet we easily lose ourselves the moment a negative emotion strikes. Sadly, people keep rushing outward, gathering external achievements. Bank accounts full of money, resounding fame, and a glamorous appearance are seen as the sole measures of success. But all those brilliant things will quickly become a hollow shell if the mind is being burned daily by pressure, jealousy, and the fog of ignorance. A person's true value has never been measured by what they hold in their hands. It is always measured by the peaceful stillness they maintain in their head. The absence of peace often stems from the habit of attachment, clinging to illusions that have passed. There is an old story about two monks on a pilgrimage. Reaching a wide, fast-flowing river, they met a woman who was struggling in fear, not knowing how to cross to the other side. The older monk did not hesitate. He picked the woman up on his shoulders, stepped firmly through the water, and set her down gently on the far bank. Then, the two continued on their way. Hours passed, and the young monk, traveling with him, remained restless and uncomfortable, frowning in thought without speaking a word. Finally, unable to bear the inner torment, the younger one spoke up in reproach, asking how a renunciant could touch a woman so carelessly. Hearing this, the old monk simply turned and smiled kindly, then gently replied that he put her down on the riverbank long ago, and asked why the younger monk was still carrying her in his mind until now. Just like that young monk, people in the world always carry invisible burdens on their backs. Things that happened yesterday, last month, or even wounds from many years ago are still cherished, nurtured, and watered every day in the consciousness. A malicious criticism, a loss of property, or a resentment towards someone who once betrayed us, even though the physical event ended long ago, the mind stubbornly refuses to let go. This tireless attachment automatically generates suffering. Suffering does not actually come from the hardship of crossing a stormy river, but from not knowing how to put the burden down when your feet have touched the shore. The mind continuously reconstructs the scene of pain, forcing itself to relive that terrible moment over and over again. That is how humans build an invisible prison and then incarcerate their own lives within it, to liberate oneself from those self-created burdens. There is only one path, which is practicing the art of stopping, or, in the insightful language of the wise, mindfulness. Mindfulness is not a distant magic. It is simply a sturdy anchor dropped deep into the rushing river of consciousness. When the storms of emotion begin to rise, when anger rumbles in the chest, or when greed stirs to take control of the body, mindfulness does not use violent suppression. It does not force a person to deny their own emotions. It merely lights a beam of awareness to illuminate all things. Thanks to that silent light, we clearly see the anger taking shape. We see the chest heaving and the hands clenching. Smiling softly to recognize it, we then decide to loosen our grip, compassionately letting that storm drift into the void. The greatest strength of a being lies entirely within this single thought of stopping. A wicked idea has just sprouted in the head, waiting to turn into a bitter word that hurts the person opposite, or a blindly destructive action. Immediately recognize and break it yourself, cutting off the source of the action right where the thought was born. That is the most glorious moment, the moment of personally cutting the solid chain of the karma of samsara. One does not have to wait exhaustedly for the next life or hope for a miracle in some distant existence to be liberated. Escaping the swirling wheel of suffering begins right here, in this current life, at the very moment a thought is powerfully stopped. One thought stopped is one heroic step out of samsara. One thought let go is one step closer to the absolute freedom of the soul. It is easy to let oneself react according to old habits. Someone scolds us, and we immediately raise our voice in response. Someone causes us a loss, and we rack our brains for a way to retaliate at all costs. Living by drifting along with such instinctive reflexes is no different from voluntarily allowing the wheel of karma to crush our own peace. But when mindfulness lights the way, an invisible space is created between the stimulus and one's response. In that beautiful silent space, choice is born. The choice not to continue pouring oil onto the fire. The choice of calm silence instead of sharp, wounding words. The choice of tolerance and forgiveness instead of holding onto a heavy mass of resentment that withers the soul. All the power to change destiny lies entirely within that miraculous space. The path to liberation actually stretches beneath very simple footsteps. It is so simple that many are skeptical, trying to drape it in grand, mystical robes beyond reach. But the truth is that liberation does not lie in the effort of memorizing thick volumes of scriptures, full of scholarly words. Nor does liberation require humans to flee from daily life, climbing cold and dangerous snow-capped mountains to meditate and attain the way. Demystifying enlightenment and stripping away the layers of hazy mist, one will find it extremely close. Nirvana, or the state of absolute peaceful stillness, is not a vague, distant realm somewhere out in the vast universe. It manifests right here, in this small space, at the very moment of slowly inhaling a breath of fresh air and gently exhaling worries. When the mind is completely whole with the present moment, not preoccupied with the fading past, and not panicked with worry about the future that has not yet arrived. That is the purest and truest state of freedom. A human life passes as quickly as a horse's shadow passing a window, or as fast as a casual blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, the hair on one's head is streaked with silver, and the skin is marked by the age spots of time. At the end of the road, what remains most deeply is not how much money was earned, or how many people were stepped upon to stand in the highest position. The only thing that matters is how many times one has triumphed over the dark, wild parts within oneself. Do we have the power to maintain mindfulness amidst the swirling currents of life? Do we have the courage to decisively stop the mind the moment an unwholesome thought begins to arise? That is the greatest and most important question of an entire human existence, full of these unions and separations. No one else can answer for us. Continue practicing like that, keeping the mind clear and still before all the violent fluctuations of joy, sorrow, gain, and loss in life. Then, a day will come when you suddenly see yourself like the Zen master leisurely sitting under the eaves of the temple years ago. The world around continues to move and change. The wind continues to blow and the flag continues to fly. The gains, losses, and rivalries of this absurd human world continue to turn without ceasing. But standing before all that illusory noise, the heart is eternally at peace, and there are no longer any surging waves that can shake it.